Hello, everyone. Gosh, this is exciting. This is my first time on StreamYard. So hello, everyone. My name is Sally. I am the co-founder of WorkTripp. And I'm really delighted to welcome you back to the impactful Offsites webinar series that we've been running. And this series was really born out of the recognition that as we work in an increasingly distributed mode, leaders are spending more and more time considering how, where, and when to gather their teams together in person. So Sophie and I have built WorkTripp to help more teams experience gatherings that are memorable for all the right reasons, so that increase culture, connection, creativity, and ultimately to build those bonds that make work an utter joy. And having sat on several leadership teams myself at fast-paced tech companies, and tried to influence and create this kind of offsite on top of my day job, I know how hard it is and I know how much time it takes. So team leaders out there, I feel your pain. We are here to offer some practical tools, some resources, case studies, and inspiration to build a community of support in this area. We want everyone to leave feeling more confident about the task ahead and creating impact, not just logistics. So today is all about sharing some of those best practices so you don't have to make all the mistakes that I made, and to signpost where you can get the support you need to make the process a little bit less daunting. So last time we had some really great advice and a lot of amazing follow-up resources as well to check out from our guests Nadia and Tanya. And this week I am delighted to welcome back Rowena. Wave! Who many of you know and love, and to bring Sam, Sam, there she is, Valentina, yay, and Chris into the fold. Let's do that one. There we go. That's much prettier. We like that one. So this webinar is called the Case Study Edition, and that means that we're going to be digging into some real examples, so high impact offsites that these amazing panelists have all created for their teams. I'm ridiculously excited to learn from them, and I want to leave space for some of your questions as well as we go through the webinar, so please don't be shy. You can use the comment function to let us know your thoughts and questions for the panel as we go along. I might also be asking you some questions, which will look a little bit like this. What did you have for breakfast? So if you're watching live, then you can use that as an opportunity to share your views via the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's meet our guests. So let's focus on Row to start off with. Hello, Row. So Rowena Hennigan is the founder of Row Remote. I'm going to do that really embarrassing, cringy introduction for you, Row, where you can just sit there and smile. Hashtag work is not a place. This is Rowena's motto and her trending hashtag. Originally from Galway, Ireland, she's now based in Zaragoza, Spain, regularly mixing remote work and travel with her location-independent family. Rowena advocates for life-work balance. I'm here for that. Advised by her lived experience of moving countries due to her daughter's ill health. And using her wealth of personal experience in remote work, she educates both companies and workers on skills for an effective and positive nomadic experience via her brand Row Remote. So, hi, Row.
Hola, buenos días.
Such a pleasure to have you back here. Thank you for joining us. And next I am going to bring up Sam. So Sam Laliberte is a founder and host of Freedom Lifestyle. She's a freelance event host specializing in planning international retreats for remote companies. She ensures that every event is fun and meaningful, fostering full participation and engagement for all employees. And I know you're going to share a little bit more about how you do that later today, so I'm really delighted with that. And with an extensive portfolio of successful retreats, this is going to make you all jealous, Sam has orchestrated remarkable gatherings in breathtaking locations around the world, from Bali, which we will hear a little bit more about later, to the vibrant landscapes of Tulum, Costa Rica, Austria, Cape Town, and beyond. Welcome, Sam. We're delighted to learn from you. And Valentina. Hello, Valentina Thörner, Empress of Remote with her tiara, and founder of RemoteThatWorks. So Valentina is a remote leadership expert, and she supports product-led startups and scale-ups at the executive level to create a distributed reality that works for the entire team, which I love. She's got over a decade of experience in product leadership and CX, so she knows it all, working remotely for most of her career. And as a single mum, she's also well-versed in managing real-life scenarios while getting things done. And some of those practical parts, I think, are going to be super useful for us to learn from. So welcome, Valentina.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, but by no means least obviously, we have Chris Mallet. Welcome. So Chris is co-founder and CEO of BODYSWAPS, which is an awesome company. So following about a decade in social media and VR-based storytelling, Chris co-founded BODYSWAPS in 2019 with a mission to make soft skills training autonomous, affordable, and effective. Amazing. He believes that everyone has the potential to learn career-boosting soft skills given the right tools, and BODYSWAPS is harnessing AI and immersive technologies to make this possible. And I would strongly recommend anyone who has the opportunity to try out to do it, because it's absolutely fantastic. Chris is an international speaker and regular podcaster on VR and learning, and he also organised the first BODYSWAPS offsite with WorkTripp last year. So I'm really excited to get his perspective on this topic. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Sally. Glad to be here.
Great. So with all the intros done, let's get into the subject. We're going to start big and then we're going to get into some of the details. So we're going to start off with Valentina, and Valentina is going to tell us all about Klausfest, which is an offsite that she organised. So I would love you to give us a quick overview, Valentina, of the sort of the why behind this get together. What were you hoping to achieve with it? Oh, I'm going to do that. You're on mute thing.
It's not a remote thing if not somebody is on mute. So.
Well, I agree. I agree. Go on, Sandra.
We now know that this is real and it's live. So the offsite that we organized. Now I see. I think we are swapping. Body swapping.
Go on, there you go.
So we were about 70 people, and Klaus is a hybrid company. There is headquarters in Tallinn in Estonia, and about half of the workforce, 60% of the workforce, are actually based in Estonia. That does not mean that they go to the office, but they have the option to actually meet up informally a lot more than everybody else. And then the other 1/3, 1/2 of the company is actually all around Europe. So we wanted to bring everybody together to make sure that we can create bonds across department and across cultures. Because if you are working in the country that your company is technically based in and the majority of the team is from that country, you get kind of a culture pull from that culture, from that work culture, which is great if everybody can like get into this culture. But for that, you need to know each other. So we wanted to create like once a year a get together where we actively bring together people that usually don't talk, either because they're not in the same country or because they are in completely different departments. And the goal was really bonding experience so that everybody feels that they are an equally valid member of the team, and that we don't have like first-class citizens and second-class citizens, or because you don't have access to the office, you're kind of not as important. So this was kind of the big get together to create a coherent Klaus identity, basically.
Amazing. And how did that goal impact how you structured the event and how you thought about it?
So the first thing is that we did is it didn't happen in Estonia. We actually did it somewhere else. So in this case, we chose Costa Brava in Spain. We brought everybody together in a hotel so that everybody was actually staying in the same place, would be able to have breakfast together. I'm a huge proponent of having people getting food together, because I think the conversations that you have over lunch, dinner, or even breakfast are actually what then carries you over the rest of the year. And we made sure that all the activities that we had, a lot of them had already the groups pre-prepared. So that we didn't automatically, because if you just let people choose their group, people will always work or collaborate with the people that they already know, or people that they have been working on with together, or people that have the same mother tongue as they have. And we did this meeting specifically to break up these groups and allow for other groups to happen, which doesn't invalidate the existing group, but it allows you to actually speak to people that otherwise wouldn't be in your normal orbit. And so in terms of activities, the focus was actually around working together, especially for support, and learning together and having fun together. But the together would be different in the morning, in the afternoons, and at night, so that you have the opportunity to speak to as many people as possible, which at 70 is still an option. Like once the company is 300, 400, 5,000 people, you then will have to look a little bit more of where does it make functionally sense for people to talk to each other. But at 70 people, even until 150, you can still try to mix and match as much as possible.
Yeah, and I love how intentional you are about, even with a team of that size, really making sure that you put people together in different kinds of groups for different.
In the end, it's an Excel sheet where you then move people around. It's like, okay, this person wasn't paired with this other person.
I mean, you need some serious skills to do that well. I'm in absolute awe. And thinking back to that particular event that you organized, what would you say was your biggest learning from it? What was maybe something unexpected that happened?
So one of the unexpected things that that we didn't foresee at all is, of course, every offsite or most offsites have some kind of alcohol involved. And you do want a little bit of alcohol for the people who do enjoy their drinks, because it is a social lubricant. It lowers a little bit the inhibition so that people can actually, especially if they're shyer, can talk to each other. But you don't want to encourage binge drinking either. So in the hotel where we stayed, we allowed everybody to have as many drinks as they wanted, but the bar wasn't actually in the room where we had dinner, for example. So you had to physically get up during dinner to get your alcoholic drink, other than the wine that was served with the dinner. And just the fact that you actually had to get up, move over there, get your drink, and then come back, which meant that you would be missing part of the conversation that you're probably engaged in, meant that people, like, they didn't drink as much as we expected. Like, we were way under budget when it comes to like the alcohol part, which is an amazing, because it means that people actually enjoyed a lot more engaging with each other than just getting the alcohol level up. And it reminds me a lot, there's this experiment with the secretaries that like ate more marshmallows when the marshmallows were on their table than if they were on the other side of the room. It's like, it's impulse control. You can hack the surrounding and help people to do the behavior that you actually want to encourage, without outright telling them, we don't want you to drink more than one drink. Just put the drinks over there. They're still there. No one's going to feel that they are not allowed to drink, but it kind of lowers the incentive to get drunk. So sometimes it's these small things that, of course, now, if I'm going to organize something again, I'm going to make sure that the alcohol stays in one corner.
I love that, being intentional about that space as well as the kind of the meeting setup and the schedule. Awesome. Lovely. We will definitely hear from you later. We're going to get into some of these themes a little bit more, but I would love to go over to Chris now to ask him a couple of questions about the offsite that he organized for BODYSWAPS last year. So Chris, I'm going to start with the same kind of question. What was the goal behind you getting the team together? And if you could give us a little bit of a picture about the size of the team and where you went, that'd be great.
Yeah, so with small startup, I think that was back in December last year, we were 12, 13 people. So with small startup, we have a limited runway where we're not a profitable startup. And so everyone's working super hard to kind of like build the KPIs to get to the next round of fundraise, right? Classic race. And I'm asking everyone to put the tools down for 2 days to go watch birds and drink gin and tonic in a nature reserve. And it's costing me the equivalent of like 1 month of my marketing budget. So like, why the hell am I doing that? And the things that we're hoping for was, one, creating a culture of mutual support, right? Because on the day-to-day, when a team is remote, half the team, the product side is essentially in outside of London, and the marketing sales side is essentially in London. It's kind of split in half. But they need to help each other out outside of the job spec, right? And they need to do it not because they want a promotion 1 year from now or because they adhere to the cause of the company. They want to do it just because you want to help your friend out, because you like them. As simple as that. So that's one thing. And the other thing is also a bit of a reward for the year, a celebration of wins, and also something to look forward to. So those were the goals.
Amazing. And again, I'm really interested in, given those two things, how did you structure the time that you had together to try and achieve those?
So it was the first time we did that. So we stayed overnight at this reserve, but it was pretty much one full day, starting in the morning with kind of a group sitting down at a table, not really working, but still, a couple of the directors presenting. And I think that was the least interesting part of the day, even though it was important to set the tone a little bit. But maybe there wasn't a psychological safety there to make it worthwhile. This was still an opportunity to impress the boss, so to speak, and that's probably not something you want to allow. So would find a different balance the next time around. I think of not spending 3 hours doing presentation in the morning. And then the afternoon was, like activities, just walking around, completely very relaxed, very unplanned, just allowing conversations to naturally happen because you sitting in a truck or you climbing a hut or whatever. And then we moved into, we all had this big house, like it's like renting a summer house. It was at Christmas, like this big house. Everyone had rooms with a massive living room, and the downtime between, night falling like 5 p.m. and the dinner, those 3 hours, was completely open, but ended up being playing like board games and drinking gin and tonics. And I think that was the best moment of the day, because there was this fluidity to move around, a little bit of competition, everyone at the same level. And that I think is the kind of moments of connection that I would like to reproduce more in the future.
Yeah, I loved seeing your photos from that event. I mean, you were at Elmley anyway, which is just the most beautiful nature reserve. But yeah, you could see the sort of joy in your faces of just being together and being out in a different kind of environment. It was really lovely to see. Amazing. And what would you say your biggest learning was? Was it that structured piece at the beginning and maybe moving that around a bit, or was it something else?
Yeah, well, so you have the team now, Christmas jumpers on, very happy, just to illustrate. Well, I guess the biggest learning is it was worth it. It was worth it. We're going to do it again, and we're going to do it better. We're now 20 people, been going on for about 3 years. Only one person has left. So creating that human glue is just absolutely essential. The other learning is it's become part of a shared memory of the team. Like it's almost a milestone in and of itself, but it's not like, oh, we won that big client, or we won an award, or we raised some more money, it's very abstract, right? When you do this, it's something that happens to the company. Whereas here is, I got the answer that won us the trivial pursuit game. That's just a shared experience. And so I think that was one of the lessons: building shared memories, making it something to look forward to next. And probably the next time around, as the CEO, taking a little bit more of a step back and just be a participant, but not try to guide the day too much.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I think when we had a bit of a sort of pre-chat yesterday, all of this, and I think you were really eloquent about and very honest about those kind of questions that came up for you when you were thinking about doing it, because it takes a lot of time, as well as the financial investment of doing something like this. So I think it's really important to be transparent that that's normal, right? It's normal to have questions and concerns when you're going into creating an offsite for your team. And it's one of the first question that I would love to ask the audience, for any of those of you who are watching live. As we go into, we're going to be talking to Sam about her case study now, but I would love to hear from you what your biggest concerns are when you're thinking about creating an offsite for your team. Thank you, Chris. We'll come back to you in a second. And Sam, hello, welcome.
Hello.
I would love to hear about your case study. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about one of the clients that I've been creating events for now for 3 years. So SafeViewing, if you haven't heard of them, they provide global health and medical coverage for digital nomads and remote teams. And I've had the honor of essentially creating and designing their in-person gatherings, as well as getting to attend and host them with this team now for 3 years. And this past November, we brought the full team together in Bali, in Ubud. And that was a full week-long event. So 7 nights, I think, either 6 nights and 7 days, but a full week. And there was about 70 of us that went there. And so for context, this company is fully distributed. So they have employees living in, I don't know, maybe over 40 countries around the world. And so in that case, flying everyone to a completely unique location that they really want to go to. And Bali was actually top voted by the team, made a lot of sense. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit about that.
Fantastic. And again, let's go classic question. What was the goal? What was your brief?
So the goal with this was, well, one, have an event in Bali because the team really wants to go there. It's a big digital nomad community, and a lot of the team are avid travelers, digital nomads, just by nature of the product. And so we really wanted to go there and bring the brand there and even have an event there, which we also did. But it was also the end of the year, and it had been a really big year. They had branded their summer the summer of growth. And so the team was working really hard that previous season to, grow the company, launch some new products. And so we wanted to celebrate that at the end of the year and also give everyone an opportunity to rest and recharge. So those were themes and language we were using, like rest and recharge with us in Bali, celebrate the wins from the year. Functional wellness was thrown around a little bit. So those were definitely the big themes that played into the programming and even the location. We ended up staying at Maya in Ubud. Look it up. It's stunning. It's on like 10 hectares of like lush jungle. Everyone had their own villa. So it was a very, beautiful space for us to create this rest and recharge environment that we hope to create.
I mean, I can put myself straight there because that was where I actually got engaged, was in Bali.
Oh,
so really, it's a really, really magical location, or what a wonderful place to support that message as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really love to ask you about is because you host these events as well as planning them.
Mm-hmm.
And what have you seen about the differences between when there is an external person planning and hosting versus teams doing it themselves?
Well, I would say that sometimes it can definitely work in your advantage, but then there's times where if you're going to do something where maybe it's taking a little bit of a risk, which is definitely something that I like to do with my programming, things like talent shows or murder mystery parties. This event happened to take place over October 31st. So I figured, okay, we're there. It's Halloween. What can we do? Everyone bringing a float costume is maybe too much of an ask to bring in their suitcase. But what about maybe a murder mystery party where, your costume is more subtle and an accessory here or there? So things like that, which I really like to do. And I would say that's one of my specialties, is creating these unique, memorable events that take place amongst professional development, amongst team building. Definitely having some buy-in from like internal influences. And so I know that if I'm going to create a talent show or create a murder mystery, I have my like key people at the team who I know are always going to say yes to that stuff, who are going to be the first ones to raise their hand, who are going to like show excitement on Slack, who are going to upvote my ideas. And so definitely having some internal buy-in from those people on the team, I think is really important. And then it just helps get everyone excited and see that their peers are going to do this too. And it isn't just someone external coming in, making the whole team do something uncomfortable. It's something other people want to do and are excited about as well.
Fantastic. And what was your biggest learning from that offsite? What was unexpected or surprising from that?
The most unexpected and sad, but also fair comment is when we did the feedback, people said they did not feel like they had a chance to rest or recharge, despite it being the theme. A full week of programming, no matter how many breaks you have. We had late starts, we had co-working periods, there were tennis courts, juice bars, pools. We did everything to create that environment to make it as chill as possible. It's a lot for some people, right? Not everybody is extroverted. Not everybody finds, full days of talking to their colleagues and doing these things to be an opportunity to rest and recharge. And so while they thought it was quite productive and impactful, some people still felt like they needed a chance to rest and recharge after. So I guess the irony in that being the theme was the biggest learning, and something we're always thinking about is how do you create a conducive environment despite wanting to maximize this chance of all being together?
Yeah, it's a really hard balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's where we have we see the greatest tension, I think, with the customers that we're talking to at WorkTripp, is that balance of really wanting to fill the time properly and make maximum use of it, whilst also leaving enough space and unstructured time and just not making it too kind of intensive. Thank you so much, Sam. That was awesome. I'm going to bring everyone up to the stage now so that we can ask a few more kind of general questions, some of the themes that came up yesterday. And I would love to pick up on something that you mentioned, Sam, which is this sort of taking the risks part of it, as well as sort of being inclusive, and how you balance those two things, especially if you have maybe a larger group that you're catering for. And Valentina, you had a really lovely example of how you created that atmosphere of inclusivity before people even got to your offsite. So I'd love it if you'd share that.
So we used this offsite as an opportunity to create a new policy for breastfeeding mothers. Because when we started planning, I knew that one of our colleagues had just had her child. So at the offsite, she would just have been back from her 6-month maternity leave, which already means that she was kind of disconnected for being out for 6 months. And it would be really a shame to put her under pressure to make the decision. Either you miss this amazing event or you stop breastfeeding your child, which as a mother, like, it's not a decision anyone really wants to make. So we looked into how can we make it possible that she doesn't need to interrupt breastfeeding and she can also participate in this offsite. So what we came up with is that if you're breastfeeding, you can bring your child and another caretaker with you so that somebody can mind the child while you are participating in the activities. And we made sure that there was always one activity that you could do even if you were breastfeeding. So if there were more than one activity, like making sure that at least one of those is actually mother friendly. So like doesn't involve alcohol or doesn't involve like kayaking or rappel in the mountains or something. And we actually ran the numbers because, of course, we had to kind of approve this from if we want to make a policy, what impact does it have on the long-term health of the company? But it's really, if you look at how many people are actually women in the company, and then how many of those are going to have kids, and how many of those the breastfeeding period will coincide with your next offsite, this will probably happen like once every 5 years or something. But just being able to say, hey, we have these policies. If you are in this situation, then we're going to solve it. It also tells the story that as a company, we care for you more than just about you as a worker. We care for you as a human. And it also means that if somebody has anything else in their lives, they are like, oh, there is a breastfeeding policy. So maybe because I just broke my leg, I can ask them, tell them about this, and we can also find a solution for this. So it's not just this specific policy, it's the story that it tells about what you think as a company about your employees. So, and if you haven't, interestingly enough, this came up because I had been in a similar situation when my kids were born. And no one in the leadership team had actually thought about it because I was the only one with kids who could have breastfed in the past. So I think this is also a very important thing to make sure that those who are involved with planning or leadership teams in general, need to be as diverse as possible. Because it's not that an all-male leadership team doesn't want breastfeeding mothers to attend. They just don't realize that this could be a problem because it's not something that they are ever going to be exposed to. So making sure that you listen to people who are different to yourself as you plan your event. If you're super extroverted, talk to an introvert and ask them how they feel on these events. If get as much input as you can so that you can make it as inclusive as possible, knowing that you are not going to always be 100% inclusive, but do the best that you can and actively look for opportunities.
I love that. Just being really, you're being very thoughtful, but it's also the practical lens of it. I see so many people caught up in that policy whirlpool, right? Especially when you start getting into bigger companies, and actually for you to take a look at it and run the numbers and say, look, this is like, a couple of €100 max. This is worth it. It's not going to happen that long. I think it's a really brave and powerful stance to take. Actually, I wish more businesses did that. Nice. Ro, you must have had some experiences at offsites in your time, good ones, bad ones. I would love you to share an experience with us.
Totally. I've got lots of experiences facilitating, hosting. I actually did a retreat when I was fully in office many years ago with Vodafone UK, where we all went off for a couple of days playing Indian drums. And I can really lean into some of the comments about alcohol and all those things. So I've seen it from all those sides. But the bit I'd like to put my academic hat on is in terms of what Valentina has just said there that I think is really interesting. And it's just occurred to me is that many teams that may come forward at the moment are either hybrid or fully remote, Sally. And what's interesting about that is perhaps they're not so good at the in-person, or haven't, they haven't figured that out, especially if they're co-located across different places. So Valentina's examples, Chris and Sam, just put the lens on it, everyone joining in and listening, of the difference between fully remote and hybrid skills to being in person, and whether some particularly younger members of staff or less experienced haven't had much in-person time. So when we think about that, we think about a lot of the lessons that we learn from very good practices in remote first retreats. Social connection, in-person time. So leaning back to everyone's point of what is the balance between work and social, that percentage you might be looking for. You can look around your teams and already know how digitally skilled they are at remote, which is a really, really valuable skill, but maybe they're not as experienced as in that, with that in-person time. So with that in mind, in terms of their level of experience and skill set, you can lean in more heavily or into the social aspect. And as Chris has given the total example from his team, that he realized that maybe having the leadership angle first and not leaning into the social was a lesson learned. That one is something I really think people need to take away. Firstly, in the skills, but secondly, then inclusion in that angle, inclusion in the social part of it. So as Valentina has said, when you send everyone home, and if you're getting them all together and they're going to have these considerations, breastfeeding, introversion, whatever it may be, designing for that is the whole view potentially when we get people in person. So I think there's a couple of really interesting angles there from all the stories shared.
I'd like, if possible, to just add on to what you said, which is there's a very famous study by Google on team performance, and they look at what's the single most important variable when it comes to the performance of a team. Do you guys know what that variable is? It's psychological safety, right? That's the number one driver for performance. Not diplomas, not how long they work, not salary, psychological safety. And this is even more important in the context of remote work, because you don't have those like organic ways of coming up with opportunities. There's no small talk, right? And so unless people feel safe to feedback, to take initiatives, there's invisible dust being buried under the carpet somewhere, and you don't know about it. And so if psychological safety is important and you only have one opportunity to have people together, you want to create that culture of psychological safety, but you also need to give it first, right? So we did bird watching. We didn't do a talent show. And we didn't do a talent show because putting someone on stage, if they are an introvert, if they haven't met the team before, if they're not used to, it's absolutely terrifying. It's something they would, be scared like for weeks ahead of doing that if they knew it was the case that it was going to happen. And if they are told on the day, they might just completely hate the actual moment. So for us, at least, we needed to find an activity that was completely psychologically safe when you were not put on stage, which in our case was bird watching, right? You couldn't get more safe. But then also you need to find an activity where people are going to fail, so to speak, but fail fine, which is a board game is a good example where failing is part of the game and it's safe. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on finding psychological safety, what the right balance is, maybe stuff that haven't worked. I'm curious to hear from you.
I'm going to leave it open to the floor. Has anyone got any? Go on, Ro.
And I know Valentina can lean in on this potentially as well if I kick it off. As remote first experts, we actually look in a lot of the workshops and trainings that we do to build psychological safety from the remote first view and virtual environment view. So leaning into what I know WorkTripp does really well, you can start that preparation before you go to the in-person retreat, well before it, and continue it ongoing as you're onboarding members. Because with good workshop facilitation, you can use the tools not only in workshop facilitation, but leadership one-to-ones, where people are trained in looking and building that psychological safety. So I think it's something that needs to be across all those touch points ongoing in the ideal world, but it's certainly on my pedestal a lacking skill generally, even in remote first teams that have been established for a while. So I do totally agree with what Chris is saying. It's very, very much needed. But don't think you're going to have an event that's going to be the silver bullet and answer it. It needs to be something like any human relationship. When we're looking for safety, we look for it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, it's something that McKinsey talks about a lot, isn't it? That there's a dramatic underinvestment in psychological safety, because it feels, I imagine, because it's difficult to create that. It's ever moving. It depends on the kind of conversations and the interactions that you're having. And also it doesn't feel as directly related to the hard and, fast business results, although we know, that it is. It's really strongly linked.
And it requires leaders to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot create psychological safety if you as a leader are projecting absolute perfection. It doesn't work. Like, you as a leader need to show that you are also a person, and that there are things you do really well and things you don't do as well, or that you don't always fulfill all the things that are expected from you. And I think
yeah, exactly. And Valentina, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday to link through, because I think it's interesting as well for the group. We spoke about leaders that might be nervous about doing retreats, that are the decision makers and holding the budgets, because they're not great in person. Maybe they're introverted, maybe they just haven't got the experience. And therein lies the problem as well, that they're taking their bias of being a little bit scared about being vulnerable and denying or not enabling their teams to build that psychological safety and social connection needed. As Chris said, it's the glue of effective teams if we can do these retreats well. And so therefore, exactly to that, if they're not going to be vulnerable, if they're nervous about organizing, and to Sam's points earlier, if they're nervous about risk-taking, breaking down cultural bonds, if they haven't checked in with their biases, then maybe they should still do this, but with support of an organization like WorkTripp.
I have a very practical resource for you, and I'm happy to write it up to share it afterwards with the people who are watching, who are going to watch later. Because I do think that the first, the welcome session and the first thing that you do at any retreat kind of sets the mood and the pace of the rest. So my absolutely favorite welcoming activity is, you get lots of those, those washi tapes. It's basically like tape, but that you can write on it, because it's basically paper and you can peel them off very easily from any floor, which is important. So you print out a photo, the Slack photo or whatever, of every single employee, whether they attend or not. Print them out really nicely and then distribute them on the floor. Everybody, and then throw in lots of washi tapes and tell people that they can connect themselves with different people with a washi tape, and then write on top why they feel connected to that person or why they appreciate that person. And then you give people 20 minutes, 30 minutes, put some refreshments, so not everybody is stomping over each other at the same time. People will step back, will look and put another connection. And then make sure that you have some connection ideas in place, because they're going to look at you to see for the examples. So, for example, I can put myself to somebody specific and say, thank you for always giving me feedback on my drafts or whatever. And then you wait and you see this spider web emerging, which is very colorful, shows a lot of great work that is already happening, and it includes the people who are not there, because you also put their picture there. So you then can make photos and send it to them and say, hey, we included you in this activity, and everybody said that you do this right, or look here what is on those washi tapes. And then you make a photo of the entire thing at the moment and take it home with you. So after the retreat is done, you can then, from a leader perspective, analyze who has only 1 or 2 connections, who looks like they may need a little bit more inclusion to feel safe, who looks like they haven't added any connections themselves. So you can you get this in the moment oh my God, we are a company, but you also get the opportunity afterwards to look at it with when all the emotions are cooled off and be like, I wonder if this person should actually be talking to this other person a lot more because they do very similar thing. That's weird. I'm going to kind of coax them to get an introduction. So it's kind of it has this dual way of understanding what's going on and helping people to actually appreciate what's going on. And then you need 15 minutes to peel off the washi tapes from the floor at the end of the day.
It only takes 15 minutes. That's amazing. And what kind of size, what's the maximum size group you've seen that work for?
We did it with 70.
You did it with 70? Really?
70 pictures, like about 12 people didn't make it because of COVID. So there were like 60 people in the room. That's why like give it half an hour so that people actually, because not everybody will be in the middle of the circle at the same time. But yeah, it works with surprisingly big groups.
I would love to see that picture if you've got it somewhere. Try and dig it out of the archive.
I'll see if I can find it. Yeah.
And the only thing I'm going to jump in is because we did have a comment that I saw coming in. What about budgets and the costs at the moment? Because obviously a lot of people are feeling that pressure. That a version of what Valentina has explained, and maybe Sam will have some examples because she does some of these retreats, etc., virtually, can be done as well. So again, if you don't have the travel budget, if you don't, thinking of the planet, if you can't travel, whatever, there are some similar things. I mean, in person is really, really good. We are saying that if you can do it, even in smaller groups, but there are some similar exercises I've seen in workshop facilitation virtually that can get similar results.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. One of the things that we do, picking up on what you said, Chris, is we always encourage people to do one of those connection activities first, right? Rather than launching it. I think people tend to go, they're like, let's have the welcome and we'll dive straight into the CEO's speech or the product demonstration or the thing. We see that quite a lot. People are really keen to get into it because they want to show that it's really productive. And it takes quite a lot of persuasion generally to say to people, no, welcome. And then maybe go on a walk together. Fine. You know, we specialize in venues that are out of cities. So they're always in beautiful surroundings. So we say, actually, if the first thing you're doing after that welcome, when, you know, you feel great, everyone's a little bit nervous, is you go for a walk together, guided or otherwise, it's instantly easier to get over some of that awkwardness of everyone being in a room together, and then maybe they have to do an activity at some point and work with people, and it's a kind of easy way of doing it. Lovely. One of the things that we talked about a little bit was how much are people getting together just for fun versus an expectation of getting something out of it at the end. I know people have very different opinions about this when it comes to offsites, so I'm interested in what all of your opinions are.
I have opinions.
Go for it.
No, because like before I moved into product management and then leadership, my background is actually in customer support and customer experience. And that is the cohort in any company above whatever 30 that suffers the most on offsites, because most companies don't want to shut down customer support for an entire week in Bali or in wherever. And then the people who are actually doing all the fun stuff and then using their lunch breaks to catch up on tickets, which usually is an 8-hour workday. So there's no way they're going to do this within the hour and a half lunch break. They are usually the ones who get the least both connection as well as rest and as well as like learning and self-development out of those trips because of the nature of their work. And so for me, it's always very, very important that as you plan your offsite, you don't just think about your own team, which is usually the leadership team or maybe the HR team, but you actually think about those people who have to do work anyway, whether you plan for it or not, and to make their lives easier by actually planning for it. So what we did at Klausfest is that every day before lunch and before dinner, we would have an hour and a half of co-working, which the support people, each support person got 5 to 6 people assigned that would sit, again, assigned arbitrarily so that they wouldn't be the same people all the time, they would be sitting at like a workstation together, and then the support people could just ask question, hey, engineer this, engineer that, designer that, and go through their tickets quicker because they had the other people around them, which also made it created this little empathy situation, because suddenly the engineers, the marketing team, everybody understood what it actually means to be a customer success person or to be a customer support person, because they could see the sometimes easy but very often very complicated and very weird questions that the support team is just wrangling, like as if it was super easy. And then if they ask a question to somebody else, they're like, oh, I have no idea how this works. So by making them work together, and then of course the people who are not support, they don't just wait there for questions to be asked them, but they can also work on their own things. But by making the structures co-working time a thing, the support team didn't feel the pressure of having to do work kind of in the in-between times. And usually apart from the support PAM, I really like the mix between kind of 50-50 or maybe even 40-60, but like doing work in the morning when everybody still is fresh, and then in the afternoon do fun activities, so that every day also has a little bit of work in them, because at the end of the day we are creating these connections because we want people to work better together. So it actually helping them to see how other people work, not just online, but in real life. Oh, this person is always wearing these huge headphones and goes into, I don't know, epic fantasy music while they are coding. And oh, this other person like needs one screen and 3 external screens to actually be productive. Like knowing these things, how another person works, makes it easier to then connect with them on a collaborative way outside of the meetup.
I think that's such a good point. Before we started adding co-working time to our gatherings, we would find people were working in the middle of programming, and then that can be really negative because they have the best intentions. They're like, well, this is my job, so I'm going to make sure I close this sale or I move this forward. But visibly, it can actually be seen quite disrespectful that you're on your laptop while the CEO or a leader of a team is giving a department update. And so that was like the first iteration of just seeing that people were working during sessions. So then it was, okay, let's set an intention at the beginning of the week. During the sessions, laptop closed, phone away. We've put a lot of effort into this. We want you to be fully engaged. And then we'll create free time. But then what happened is exactly your case. There's some functions that actually have to work. And there's some that, that can wait till next week for whatever reason. And that created a divide. So I think actually calling it co-working time and creating a whole vibe around that, that's usually when our afternoon coffee comes and there's treats. And we even try to do like Pomodoro method, where the first 25 minutes of the co-working is facilitated. Okay, everyone, what are you doing? Great. After 25 minutes, the treat comes, and like creating a whole vibe around that, I think is important, or else you have weird things that happen where some people work, some people don't, some people work during sessions. So important.
Love that. Go on, Chris.
Firstly, thanks a lot, because that's super interesting. And we did that mistake in a retreat we did, and I see exactly what you mean of having someone talking and someone on the laptop, because there's an issue with the client, even at a very small scale, and even if it was just like one or 2 days. I guess one of my questions for you / also learning, you ask, what should you look to achieve with those? And I think a natural tendency from leadership is to look for tangibility. I don't know if that's a word in English, but you get what I mean, right? You want tangible achievements from it. And so, okay, this is going to be the opportunity to communicate the vision, to do like a department updates, to brainstorm about our culture, like all of those things. But I'm wondering if what we're looking for is to create that human glue that will keep people together whilst they work abroad, your only objective should be to create that glue, whatever makes it happen. And it might be that the top-down communication from the heads of is not the best glue factory. And it might be that even as hard as it is for a leader saying, I'm paying those people salary, I have objectives, I have KPIs, I have clients, I have investors, to say, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and we're going to do an activity that I might find silly, but that's actually where the value is. So I'm wondering where you guys find the value in terms of feedback from the people you work with.
I think it's a really interesting point, and I think some some teams really benefit from having a structured experience. So when we come out of this, we will know that we will have our strategy taken to a certain place, or we've got our OKRs set, and they will have someone who helps to kind of guide them through that process. So as well as having a tangible output, they're also learning something together. They're actually learning how to do that process really well, and that's something they take away. So I think that's interesting. One of the things that we do is offer a sort of method of impact measurement, which is quite hard to do for something like an offsite. So we have surveys that we can send out pre and post work trips that will ask questions to gauge the level of psychological safety and the levels of intrinsic motivation and the level of perceived team performance beforehand and afterwards. And obviously those are complex measurements. There are so many things that are involved in that, but it does give a really interesting snapshot, no matter what you have done and how structured the time was, about how have those things actually moved on over the course of you being together.
I can jump in here with an example for Chris that might also stimulate some thinking. That I know that Chase from Joyce, Chase Warrington, in one of his recent retreats, specifically looked at non-laptop. Sam mentioned this as well, non-laptop time for certain collaboration experiences. So I think they had a few rooms that there was no tech allowed in at all. So we know the Google stories as well, where they have certain rooms where it's all pen and paper. So Joyce would be pretty advanced at online collaboration. They're fully remote for many years, so they would be using things like Miro or Mural for brainstorming. But what was interesting from their perspective is they said, let's take this totally analog, totally offline. And then he did a review of that and how that worked with the real Post-its, etc. And they took lessons across to the online environment. So again, it's starting, Chris, to answer your question as well. It's starting where you're at. And obviously Sally has mentioned surveys, but some sort of survey or some sort of base analysis of where a team and company are at the moment. We've given lots of examples to where they want to be post a retreat effort or a team event effort. But also think of these basic things. What makes the glue for your team? What is this? Where are you on social interactions? And we can look in so many places nowadays to see that. We can look on our Slack channels. We can look on even what meetings are happening. So anyone organizing retreats, joining in, there's some simple places you can look to see, even to Valentina's point, is there cross connection? Is there cross collaboration across our matrix organization or not? So I have to bring that in, Sally, if you were also looking at, should we be doing OKRs as the main aim? If from a basic piece of analysis, you're saying half the people don't know the other half of the people in the company at all. They've never even had a 20-minute call with them. So, which I've come across with various clients as well. So from that perspective, then my main message would be, and listening to all these other wonderful experts, go back to basics and look at the basics of creating that glue, which is often social connection.
I love it. Thank you so much. Great words. I'm conscious of time. We've only got 4 minutes left. So I want to do a quick round the virtual room. And I would love each of you to suggest either a resource or a podcast or a tool or anything that you think could be really useful for the audience who are watching and listening to us today, and they're thinking about how they maybe want to get their team together. So, Ro, I know you shared quite a lot last time, so I don't know if you've held anything back for today. Oh, she has. Of course she has. Ro, let's start with you.
So I would just say, the next time you're enjoying yourself in any type of social event or in an experience socially, forget business for a minute. Notice what gets you happy, what brings you joy, what makes your gut kick off. Because there's something in those feelings that will help you also understand and bring that design to your next team retreat.
Beautiful. Sam.
It's kind of cheesy, but my resource is your team. I think that I really try to co-create these experiences with the team, getting their input from every step of the way, getting them to vote on things, whether it's like, okay, we're going to do Saturday offsite. Do you want to go to this lagoon, or do you want to do a surf lesson, or do you want to do this? We're going to do a theme day. Should it be 80s day? Should it be funky shirt day? Even if it's like light little decisions that don't maybe impact leadership programming and these more strategic things, getting them involved, helping them feel like they're shaping the experience is not only going to ensure that they feel more ownership over it and more like likelihood that they're going to go with it because they kind of made a lot of these decisions, but you're also going to ensure that you feel confident in whatever you're doing because you've taken in that input along the way. So really use your team and help them feel like they can create the experience too.
Amazing. Lovely. Chris?
There we are. Again, super basic as well. Something that's worked quite well on our side. And again, we're 20 people, so we're quite small. Is every new joiner gets a 20-minute call with everyone else, whenever they want, to just introduce themselves. But then every Friday we have, just before breaking for the week, we have a reflections meeting, which is 45 minutes end of the week, and we do various activities. It changes every time. The one that we do systematically is new joiners to introduce themselves with in 5, 10, 15-minute presentation. It can be whatever they want, whatever format. They can talk about their passion, their family, where they come from, and it's a moment that not only the new joiner appreciates, but it's something that also creates that glue, because you find connections. Like, going back to the tapes on the floor, you find connections not because someone gives you a lot of feedback, but because you both love watching birds, right? And that's not something that would have come up in any other meeting. So yeah, spend time to give people a little bit of the stage light, but giving them time to prepare for the stage.
Amazing. And Valentina, last word from you.
Because I'm very much into processes and how can we tweak the system, because that's easier than tweaking humans. It's really like you have your team as your resource, and you can involve them in planning, and you can also get ideas from them that otherwise you would not have, so you know which questions to ask. So ask your team, which retreats did you go on, and what are the small things that you remember that went really, really well, and what were the things that you absolutely positively hated? Because those can very often give you like an example of how to make it better. For example, on all the retreats that I even tangentially involved in, there's now wristbands, so that you can show whether you need a social out and don't want anyone to talk to, or whether you're really looking to talk to people, so that it's an easy way to show in which emotional state you are. But this is because somebody told me I was completely overwhelmed with everybody wanting to talk to me. So how can you create a structure that actually makes it easy for people to do the right thing and makes it slightly inconvenient doing the wrong thing?
Oh, I love that. Such great tips today and such amazing ideas. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for sharing your wisdom and experiences with us. And thank you for those of you who are watching live via LinkedIn or StreamYard, or watching back asynchronously. So if this has inspired you, please do follow WorkTripp. You can find us on LinkedIn, you can find us on Instagram, and of course connect with me and our amazing guests who are here today. And for more offsite ideas and tips and building connection in distributed teams, these are your experts to go to. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to the panelists, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.